All right, let's welcome our very first speaker for today, Aleksandr Bezobrazov, VP of Marketing at G5 Entertainment. And we're connecting to speaker.
Hello, Elena. It's nice to hear
Hi,
you.
Alexander.
Yeah, hello, Elena. It's nice to hear. I'm very happy and excited to be here during the Talents Game conference. So thanks for having me here.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Hope you're all ready and excited for the talk, as much as we are, at least. Where are you based, by the way?
Well, I'm based currently in St. Petersburg, Russia, but I'm here due to the COVID-19 situation. So hopefully when the borders are opened, I will be able to go to Sweden, where our headquarters is located.
Okay, well, sounds like a good plan, and hopefully we will all be able to do that very soon. All right, thank you very much for joining, and we're all yours.
Okay, so today I'm going to talk about analytics for user acquisition, and I want to take not the convenient route in talking about the analytics for user acquisition. There are many articles about how to calculate certain metrics, how to approach user acquisition, and how to approach analyzing that. That's basically about the tools and about approaches, about how to do that. I want to talk about who does that. So I want to talk about the people who are really taking care about user acquisition and people who really care about analyzing user acquisition, because that is really very important and exciting thing for me. And hopefully by the end of the presentation, you would understand why it's very exciting for me. So the first question is, who really cares about the user acquisition? So who really needs to analyze the data? Who really needs to understand what is going on, and why am I going to talk about these people? The first group is obviously user acquisition managers. These people have in their job description the need to analyze the user acquisition. They need to understand how to optimize certain advertising campaigns. They need to understand how to work with the certain creatives. So that's a significant part of their jobs. The second group is definitely the guys who are working as analysts, and in most of the companies that are publishing games, developing games, there are people who are called analysts. They are responsible for analytics of their titles, and obviously they are asked to analyze certain things about user acquisition because that's their profession. The next group is the group that consists of producers or the product managers. The name is really dependent upon the company. And basically, these are the people who are responsible for the success of a certain title, be that game or be that casual game, hardcore game, mid-core game, or even hyper-casual game. And the last but not least group is the management, and that group is really responsible for entire company. They obviously care about the certain game, but they also have to be responsible and care about the bottom line of an entire company. They need to understand what kind of expenses are invested there in user acquisition. They need to understand how it impacts the bottom line of the company, how it impacts the market position, and so on and so on. So basically, I'm going to talk about these four groups, and the thing about that presentation is going to be about cultural background and professional background. So I'm not going to talk about these things like the UA manager has to go granular to analyze user acquisition. He needs to use that tool, this tool, or that tool. I'm going to talk about differences in how different people analyze user acquisition. And if we're talking about the UA managers, I'm going to talk about cultural background. The thing is, G5 Entertainment is a Swedish company. We're a public company, and historically our user acquisition team was based in San Francisco. That's very convenient because it's like 40 minutes by car from the Silicon Valley. Most of the largest advertising networks have their headquarters in the San Francisco Bay Area. Google has headquarters there. Apple has headquarters there. So basically, if you want to have a chat with your account manager, you can just go down with an elevator. You can just cross the street and have a cup of coffee with a person who is responsible for your account at their advertising network. You can discuss something related to the campaign you need to optimize. You can discuss something about enrolling the beta test, and so on and so on. So that's very convenient. In the last 12 months, G5 Entertainment launched 8 new titles. As a matter of fact, the 9th title was launched yesterday on iOS and today on Google Play. So we knew that we're going to significantly increase our investment to user acquisition. We knew that we're going to significantly increase the amount of work the UA manager has to do, and we decided to scale our user acquisition team. The thing with scaling user acquisition team in San Francisco is that not only their UA expertise is high there, the competition for that expertise is also very significant. So we decided to scale our team by creating a new team in Eastern Europe. And we can say that North American team is our basic team. It was with us when we scaled Hidden City, our largest title to the date. It was with us when we scaled some other titles. But now we have a new team in Eastern Europe, and that team is actually not located in one location. It's distributed across several countries. As a matter of fact, the entire marketing in G5 is distributed across more than a half dozen of cities, more than 5 different countries, and across 2 different continents. And the thing is, different people approach analyzing user acquisition with a different mindset, with a different focus, you can say. So if we're talking about the people in our North American user acquisition team, I'd say they are more people-oriented, people-centric. So if they want to ask someone to create a new UA video or new banner, they would probably concentrate on how it's going to interact with the feelings of the person. They going to think about how it's going to be looking in the current context. Well, obviously the context that everyone probably is sick of already is the COVID-19 situation. But if we're talking about the user acquisition team that we have now in Eastern Europe, that team is very number oriented. So they probably going to concentrate on certain metrics, like we need to have IPM, this or that. We need to have something technical, like we need to create this custom audience with that parameters. I cannot really tell you that one, the first or second approach is better or the worst. It's actually wonderful and exciting thing for me professionally to work with the people from different cultural backgrounds and to see how they approach analyzing user acquisition, because that really helps our company to increase the efficiency of user acquisition. Our team in Eastern Europe really learns from the people in North America. The guys in North America really know the culture of North American United States people. They understand the current context, and obviously the United States is one of the most important markets for most of the gaming companies. If we're talking about the American team, they really learn from our European team. It doesn't mean that the user acquisition team in North America is not performance-oriented. Far from that, they are really performance-oriented people. But they are really concentrating on people, and people in Eastern Europe, at least our user acquisition team, they are more focused on numbers. And that mix really helps us to find the right approach to analyzing user acquisition team. I'd say they really complement each other, and that is really exciting for me to compare that between different cultures, between North America and Eastern Europe. And the outtake here is that cultural background really matters when you're analyzing user acquisition. If you have people only from one cultural background, probably you're missing something. If you have the ability to work with the people from different backgrounds, as our user acquisition managers are able to do, your professional level will start growing, because you kind of broaden your horizons and you start acknowledging that the truth is not the thing that you know, that there are many kinds of truth, and different people from different cultural backgrounds can really see it in different ways. And that is, I'm just trying to reiterate myself, that's very exciting. We're still going to be launching new games. We're still going to hire people here in Eastern Europe. As a matter of the fact, we're going to create a second team here, so because we have so much titles that we really need to scale. But that doesn't mean we want to relocate user acquisition to Europe like some of the companies done in the past. We're really excited to have teams in several countries, in several time zones, and we're really excited that our user acquisition managers are able to outperform themselves, that they are able to grow professionally by acknowledging and getting the benefits of working with the people from different cultural backgrounds. The second group is the group, I was talking that this group consists of analysts, but the thing is, different companies have different types of analysts. There are obviously companies that have only one position, one role, simple analyst. That person usually works with a product team. That person really analyzes product metrics, and sometimes that person is asked to analyze something related to user acquisition. There are other companies, and G5 is a part of that second group of companies. We have split analytics between people who analyze data from products and people who analyze data for the marketing, because marketing generates the huge amounts of data on par with the amounts of data, with the volumes of data that the guys in product teams generate. And as a matter of fact, I have told you that we have launched 8 new titles during the last 12 months, nine titles if I'm taking account the title that is launching now as we speak. And we also had the titles that were launched previously in the previous years. So we have more than a dozen of titles. And obviously we have people in product teams that want to analyze data. We have people in user acquisition. We have people in live ops. We have people in app store optimization team. It's just unfeasible to have the people concentrating only on the product data, because they will be unable to find time to help the people who analyze marketing data. But the thing with that approach is that we really started to understand that different analysts have different domain knowledge. I'm going to provide you some examples, some comparison for you to understand what I'm talking about. Let's imagine that we need to understand something about user that reached the status of playing our game. So let's imagine the product or project analyst starts to analyzing the data. That person is very knowledgeable about what is going on with the game, within the game. He's knowledgeable about first-time user experience, about how to interpret the changes within the balance of the game. He can probably provide the team with recommendations about what to change in order to impact this metric or that metric. And that's great. But performance marketing and user acquisition, as it's subset, is a separate domain of knowledge. It has its own metrics. It has its own things you need to know in order to understand that, explain that, and provide some recommendations. Imagine that user acquisition team wants to analyze traffic and try to understand whether there is some fraud or not. Our product analysts will probably start looking at the metrics that are there within the game and that are related to the user behavior. So he probably started to calculate the income levels of soft currency, of hard currency. He's going to check progression speed, engagement levels, and so on and so on. So basically, he's going to try to find cheaters within the game, the players whose user behavior is different from what is considered normal. If we're talking about the person who analyzes user acquisition as his focused profession, as a marketing or user acquisition analyst, is going to analyze different networks. He's going to analyze different metrics like times to install. He's going to analyze tracker URLs because there are different tracker URLs like impression, click URL. The definition of impression is different between different networks. He obviously going to analyze some data that there is in the game, like tutorial completion rate, payment rate, and so on. But basically, he's going to analyze not user behavior, but install parameters. So basically, he's going to try to analyze installs and the analyst from the product team is going to analyze users. The thing is, fraud nowadays is very sophisticated. The simple things like, for example, click spanning or organic poaching, they probably can be analyzed by user acquisition or maybe even marketing measurement partner have the anti-fraud solution, or maybe you just have a separate anti-fraud solution. But if we're talking about analyzing that kind of data, it requires understanding the user acquisition. It requires a separate domain knowledge. So basically, the people who have different domain knowledge, they would look at the different data, and obviously they can reach different conclusions after analyzing that data, but that data will be generated by the same users, the same instance. And that is not only the task of looking for the fraud. Obviously, both of these types of analysts, they need to help user acquisition with calculating lifetime value, maybe with a built-in prediction model. But there are also many other tasks that marketing wants from the person who analyzes user acquisition. For example, do you know that one of the largest ad networks recently, like in the last year or so, have invested in 6 different game studios that develop casual and casual games? Does the user acquisition take that into account when they decide what data to share with that particular advertising network? Well, obviously that is more market intelligence than analytics from math standpoint of view, but that is also something that user acquisition really needs to understand. And if we're talking about the G5, we really have different types of analysts even within marketing. We have roles for user acquisition or marketing analyst. We have a role of intelligence manager. Obviously, G5 has also a role of product analyst. And the gift here is that different people with different professional backgrounds, they use different data to analyze the same user acquisition. The next group I'm going to talk about is actually producers. They also have their own point of view, and that point of view I would describe as the point of view that is really impacted by the goals they have. So let's go straight towards 2 cases that allow me to demonstrate what I'm talking about. Let's imagine that some hypothetical game launched a new update, and after that update, they have found that ARPU day 7 decreases. They found that the retention rate drops. So, is it related to some update, or is it related to something that is wrong with the user acquisition? That hypothetical producer goes to the data and splits the data between organic user acquisition and paid user acquisition. And that analysis displays that really paid user acquisition has lower lifetime value, a lower retention rate. So obviously the goal of the producer is to have certain type of metric within the game. He's really interested in increasing the revenue of the title, increasing the ARPU, increasing the retention rates. And the obvious conclusion here is that user acquisition is really bringing bad users. So he goes to the UA team lead and tells him, hey, that doesn't really look like a quality traffic. But the thing is, user acquisition is, they care more about the difference between lifetime value and cost per install. So for them, that can be not especially bad situation because they have scaled the user acquisition. Obviously, the average metrics dropped, but the lifetime value still is larger than the cost per install. And for them, it's still working, and the revenue of the game is going to be increasing in the next couple of months because they are investing using the longer periods of breaking even. And from their point of view, it's actually okay. Why? Well, because they have different goals. They have the goal of profitability in terms of buying each individual cohort of users. And the goal of producer is actually looking at the average metrics. Obviously, he segments users. He segments them based on the user behavior. He segments them based on the pair group, like whether they are dolphins or whether they are whales and so on. But really, the point of view matters because the goal you have in mind really matters when you analyze the same amount of data. The second case is also demonstrates the same principle. For example, the new update, after that update, the retention dropped. Basically, all the metrics of the title dropped. And our producer tries to analyze what is going wrong with the title, whether it was update, whether it is user acquisition, and he sees that it's not the paid user acquisition, it's organic user acquisition that displays significant decrease in the metrics. So what is going on? How can he display that? Maybe that's something wrong with the market. Maybe the people do not engage with that type of genres or with that type of core mechanic at all now. Well, maybe that, but maybe the situation is different because marketing team has talked with the App Store and Google Play, and they got the feature for the title, and that feature was the global feature, and obviously it generated many users worldwide, but that also generated many users from the tier 3 countries, for example, something like India or Brazil, and the users from these countries pay less. So obviously all of the metrics dropped. And based on the fact that it was feature, usually the feature provides not so pleasant thing in terms of average metrics, because the people are less interested and less focused on your game than the people acquired from user acquisition or from the ASO efforts. So basically what I'm going here and what I mean here is that point of view really matters, because from producer's point of view, that may be something wrong either with a market or maybe with a user acquisition at all, but from the user acquisition or the marketing point of view, their data analyzed with their point of view, with their goal in mind, may be okay. So that is really impacting the conclusions we reach when we analyze different things in user acquisition. And the last group is obviously management. Well, they obviously do not do user acquisition themselves. They get the data from analysts, they get the data from user acquisition managers, maybe from producers, mostly from the user acquisition and analysts. And the thing is, people in user acquisition, people in analytics, they are really very granular. They really dig deeper in order to understand what is going on. And that is part of their job description. They really need to go granular, but by going granular, they start talking about very specific things. Like user acquisition manager is going to talk with you about what percentage he uses for his lookalike audience Facebook. Like, is it 1% or is it 3%? And what is working better or not? Whether he has enough CPM to compete with other publishers. Analysts are going to talk with you about Z-score. They are going to talk with you about Pvalue. And well, for management, that really looks not the data they really need from the user acquisition. The management, as I have already told you, they are really interested in making strategical decisions. If we're talking about the things that are related to operational strategy of the game, then maybe we're talking about the break-even period. So they need high-level data to understand whether the game really recoups the investment in that game. If we're talking about the more strategic decision, like where the company is here, they really need to understand how the market is really behaving itself. They really need to understand whether it's feasible at all to work in that specific niche with that specific genre. So maybe they need more like a mix between business intelligence and market intelligence. But they still obviously need the data from the user acquisition, because user acquisition is a significant part of the success of the title. And the thing is here, they have different planning horizon from the user acquisition manager and analyst. The user acquisition manager, basically, he needs to find some local point of growth. He needs either to stop some bad performing publisher, to stop some bad performing creative. He needs to find some way to scale that specific campaign and maybe help grow the title by scaling that specific campaign or the set of campaigns. But the management is really interested in helping the entire company grow, so they really need another types of data, and that planning horizon really impacts how they are looking at the data that user acquisition generates. So to sum it up, I have looked at 4 different groups of people. All of these people analyze user acquisition. All of these people are really interested in analyzing that user acquisition, in seeking the truth. So they need to understand what is going on. They need to understand how it impacts the bottom line, how it impacts their own work. But the thing is, the cultural backgrounds makes the difference. People from different cultural backgrounds would concentrate on analyzing different things, even if they analyzing the same title, the same campaign in user acquisition. Domain knowledge also matter because different people would try to analyze different sets of data, and obviously they can miss or find depending on whether they analyze the exactly proper set of data or whether they are looking at the wrong set of data. The point of view really impacts the results of analysis. If you're looking at the user acquisition from one point of view, you can reach one conclusion. If you're looking at the user acquisition from another point of view, you can reach another conclusion. And that doesn't really mean that someone is wrong and someone is right. The thing is, different point of view enriches the company. It really helps the company to look from all points of view and to understand what is going on in user acquisition. And obviously, the planning horizon defines the types of analytics you need, even if it is user acquisition analytics. Even if you're looking for the sole truth, the thing is, you need the different types of data. So we in G5 try to use the fact that we have offices in many countries and 2 continents. We really try to explore the fact that we have people from different cultural backgrounds, from different professional backgrounds. Obviously, we're scaling our teams. We're looking for UA managers, UA team leads. We're looking for different types of analysts. Basically, we're looking for the people who seek the truth. But we always remember that while some person alone can find some type of truth, well, really, truth is really a complex thing if we're talking about the user acquisition. It really depends on many things. It's always somewhere near, but we need many people. We really need many people analyzing that to get as close to the truth as possible. And I hope by presenting that ideas to you, I have really shown to you that it really helps to have the diverse team. It really helps to analyze user acquisition from different points of view, and that people who analyze user acquisition really matter no less than the tools and approaches you use in analyzing user acquisition, because the results of using that tools and the results of using that approaches, they really depend on people who use that. And you really need different people to ensure that you analyze user acquisition in its entirety and not only a small part of that. So thank you for listening for me. And now I pass the word to Elena.
Thank you very much, Aleksandr. Thank you for your great talk. We enjoyed it very much. And we do have questions for you, as a matter of fact. The first one is actually from me. In the beginning, you mentioned that it is very important to work with different people with different cultural backgrounds. But I believe that it may also cause some challenges in the team when it comes to decision making. So how does it work within your company?
Yes, it definitely is challenging working with the people from different countries, from different backgrounds. When the COVID-19 situation started, you probably have seen many companies talking about how we have to work from home, or some companies talked about that they provided opportunity to work from for their employees before it became mainstream. But for us, it's a bit harder than that, because we have people in different time zones, and that's not like 2 or 3 time zones. Our user acquisition team in San Francisco is in UTC -7, and our user acquisition in Eastern European is in several countries, and the Eastern is the UTC +3 time zone. So there is a 10-hour difference between these people, and they are user acquisition. They need to communicate, maybe not daily, but they really need to communicate. And that obviously need some types of agreements. For example, our user acquisition team here in Eastern Europe starts working a bit later. Our user acquisition team in North America starts working a bit earlier. They are in the western coast of the United States, and when they have different calls, when they need to have a call with someone in Europe, they start working using the Eastern coast time. So that's like 4-hour difference, and that really helps. Obviously, there are different approaches to communications. I have noted that our team in United States really prefers to have the calls. They really prefer to discuss the things by talking. So that's actually another proof of them being people-oriented. And our Eastern European team is more comfortable in discussing things over text messages, like messaging over Slack or over email. That really poses some challenges because you need to create a sort of a unified information system for everyone. You need to ensure that they have the same information, no matter what time zone they are allocated in. You need to ensure that these people can talk with each other, that they can at least have some overlap of time when they're working. But that's really what makes my work interesting, because that really helps me to interact with different people, and that challenges probably makes me a better manager when I'm facing them and solving these problems in some way.
Okay, gotcha. But also you mentioned that like different teams have different approaches towards work. So how do you actually find this unified vision for the whole company, for the team? If, for instance, one team is used to, as you said, like talking all the time, and the other one prefers not to. So what would you recommend as a leader? Is it like, how do you actually manage all of that?
Yeah, and that's actually also very closely related to the thoughts I was trying to communicate using that presentations. While seeking some unified approach may really look like the best solution, sometimes it's not. And when we are talking about people from different backgrounds, there is a quote that the whole is more than the sum of its parts. For me, in some cases, you really need to have some unified approach. For example, if we're talking about the budgeting or something that is related to the money, or if we're talking about the contracts, obviously we need to have a unified approach there. But if we're talking about something like approaching analyzing user acquisition, something like approaching communications, sometimes we approach that using the approach that is preferable by one team, and sometimes we approach that using an approach that is preferable for another team. That obviously is rather consistent. So for certain things we have text communication, for certain things we have verbal communication, but we try to use the wonderful opportunities that these different cultural backgrounds provide for us. For example, sometimes it doesn't make sense to have a long call and to discuss everything verbally. You just need to input certain data in a certain way, and you just need to have this clear and conscious message in the text form. But sometimes when the concept is really hard, when you really need to listen for different opinions, and when you really need to get the ideas from everyone, maybe the best approach is to have the call and not to try to discuss that using, for example, emails, because that would be really very, very long, and everyone can be just mistaken in understanding what is really going on.
Yeah, fair enough. I totally agree with you. Sometimes it is easier to have a few words to exchange it like on the video or on the call, rather than type in hundreds of messages and it still can be not understood in any way. All right, thank you very much for your answer. And we have one more question for you from Vladimir Koveshnikov. So, should UA person be a strong mathematician and analyst? What do you think?
Well, if we're talking about the person who is going to analyze the data as the professional product or UA analyst, obviously he needs to understand the math background behind that. Obviously, he needs to understand all of these things, like what does p-value mean, what does z-score mean, what does one-sided hypothesis or two-sided hypothesis means. But if we're talking about the user acquisition managers, that really depends. If we're talking about the guys here in Eastern Europe, most of them succeed when they have technical background, because their approach relies on knowing what is going on in terms of numbers and analyzing numbers. But if we're talking about the people in North America, they're really kind of not so math oriented, and they still perform. Basically, the math behind the user acquisition is quite simple. You need to divide this parameter by that parameter, and you will get the third parameter. The math is required when you start solving a bit less conventional things. Like, for example, if you want to predict lifetime value, you need to understand what is logarithm, you need to understand what is cohort, and so on and so on. If you want to, for example, create some sort of a prediction event for some channel that uses machine learning, obviously you will need to be very heavily involved with maths and with programming.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Like, do you have any recommendations maybe for our audience on how to actually become a good manager? Maybe there is some literature that you would recommend, or any courses?
There are several courses that appeared in the last half a year related to mobile user acquisition, and obviously they have sections and lectures about analyzing user acquisition. You can look up the courses from Dev to Dev. Unfortunately, they are only available in Russian, from what I know. They have two courses for hyper casual games. There is a lecture about user acquisition and analyzing user acquisition for hyper casual games, and there is a basic course for mobile marketing. Obviously, it is heavily involved in analytics and user acquisition. But if we're talking about certain types of books, for example, the thing is the domain, the sphere of knowledge is changing so quickly that probably there are only two ways to become the better professional. The first way is obviously an experience. You need to read everything, every article you can find. You need to test everything, and you need to derive experience from that. And the second is talking with people, because talking with people provides you with insight in how their minds works. That provides you with insight about how they approach to analyzing user acquisition, and that's exactly what I was trying to impart using that presentation. You really get the benefit, and you really become the better professional after looking at the user acquisition from different points of view, from the points of view of different cultural and professional backgrounds.
Thank you for your answer. And I have maybe a bit tricky question for you. You mentioned that you need a lot of, you still need experience for everything, basically, like in any other area of expertise. But these days, obviously, companies are looking for people who actually have some experience. But if you're just getting into the games industry and generally into the whole thing, how do you get experience if no one wants unexperienced people?
Well, that's not particularly true. Obviously, some companies are looking for ready professionals, but some other companies, and G5 is among that number of companies, we're ready to teach the person. Obviously, the person with the highest alignment for the user acquisition manager position for us is the person who has experience in promoting mobile games, the casual games, the match-free or hidden object games, because our largest titles are match-free or hidden object genre titles. But it's really hard to find that person, and sometimes it is better to find the person with a great potential, the person who maybe he has experience with mobile, but he doesn't have experience with games. Maybe he has experience with acquiring for the games, for example, for the web browser games or for desktop games, but he doesn't have an experience acquiring for mobile. We're ready to hire that person that we see potential, and we're ready to teach that person. One interesting thing about teaching the person becoming the better user acquisition manager is that you really need the volume. That's actually one of the reasons I believe the companies that do not have many titles or have much revenue, they prefer ready professionals, because they have low volume of installs acquired each month, and it's really hard for them to train the new person, because in order to train the new user acquisition manager, you really need to demonstrate the number of situations using the data. For us, when we have more than a dozen of titles in user acquisition, when we have millions of installs, it's feasible to teach the person using that numbers. We do not really risk the money. We can display most of the situations using the historical data, and to explain how the person can find the data. So basically, after several weeks or maybe a couple of months, the person would be working on the average level that is acceptable for us. So during the probation period, we can train the person.
Okay, well, that's fantastic opportunity. I'm sure that there are a lot of people who might be interested in that, who are listening to us right now. All right, and well, just a brief last question. So if I got it right, you mentioned that you guys launched new title yesterday or today?
Yes, we have launched Jewels of Egypt, the match-free title. Yesterday
Congrats on that.
it was launched on iOS, and today it was launched on Google Play.
Okay, well, cool. Thank you very much for joining us today. It was fantastic to have you in the studio. Hopefully see you very soon, somewhere offline. Well,
yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you, and see you soon.